There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain. Doors seem closed, answers feel delayed, and the path ahead looks unclear. You pray, you wait, and still nothing seems to move. In those moments, worry tries to take control. Fear whispers that nothing will change. Doubt begins to grow louder than faith. But here is the truth you must hold on to. While you are worrying, God is already working. God is never late. He is never confused. He is never trying to figure things out. Before your problems showed up, He already had a plan. Before your tears fell, He already prepared a way forward. What feels like delay to you is often divine preparation. What looks like silence is often God setting things in place behind the scenes. You may not see it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. Too often we measure God's activity by what we can see. If we don't see immediate change, we assume nothing is happening. But God doesn't operate on human timelines or human visibility. He works in ways that are deeper, higher, and more strategic than we can understand. He's aligning people, shifting circumstances, and opening doors that no one can shut. Your responsibility is not to control the outcome. Your responsibility is to trust the one who controls it all. Worry drains your strength, but faith renews it. Worry focuses on the problem, but faith focuses on God's power. You can't hold on to peace if you keep feeding your fear. At some point, you have to make a decision. Either you trust God or you let worry rule your life. And understand this: God often makes a way where there seems to be no way. When resources are low, when opportunities disappear, when everything looks impossible, that's exactly where God steps in and does what only He can do. He doesn't need favorable conditions. He just needs your faith. So instead of asking, what if it doesn't work out? Start declaring, God is already working it out. Stop replaying worst case scenarios in your mind and start reminding yourself of who God is. He is a provider. He is a healer. He is a waymaker. He has never failed, and He will not start with you. Even now, behind closed doors, beyond what your eyes can see, God is arranging things for your good. The breakthrough you're waiting for is not stuck, it's being prepared. The door you've been praying for is not forgotten, it's being aligned with the right time. So don't let worry steal your peace. Don't let fear silence your faith. Stand firm, trust deeply, and remember, God is already making a way. There are seasons in life when everything around you looks still, quiet, and unchanged. You pray, you hope, you wait, but nothing seems to shift. The situation remains the same. The door stays closed, and the answers you are looking for don't appear. In those moments, it is easy to believe that nothing is happening. It is easy to assume that God has paused, stepped back, or simply chosen not to act. But that assumption is where many people lose their peace, because they start trusting what they see more than what they know about God. God's activity is not limited to your visibility. Just because you cannot trace His hand does not mean He has stopped working. In fact, some of His greatest movements happen in places you cannot access and in ways you cannot detect. He is working in conversations you are not part of. He is moving in hearts you cannot see. He is arranging details that have not yet reached your reality. While you are focusing on what looks unchanged, God is orchestrating what will soon become undeniable. The challenge is that we often expect immediate evidence. We want signs, quick answers, and visible progress. When we don't get them, we start to question everything. But God does not operate according to human urgency. He operates according to divine timing. And divine timing is never rushed, never delayed, and never random. It is precise. It is intentional. It is perfectly aligned with a purpose that is bigger than what you can currently understand. Think about how much of life happens beneath the surface. A seed planted in the ground does not break through the soil overnight. For a long time, it appears as if nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, something powerful is taking place. Roots are forming, strength is developing, the foundation is being established. If the growth above the ground happened before the roots were ready, the plant would not survive. In the same way, God often works beneath the surface of your situation, building what is necessary before revealing what is visible. You may be waiting for an opportunity, but God is preparing you for it. You may be asking for a breakthrough, but God is strengthening your character so you can sustain it. You may be looking for open doors, but God is aligning the right timing so that when the door opens, it leads to exactly where you need to be. What feels like inactivity is often preparation. What looks like silence is often strategy. Another reason it can feel like nothing is happening is because God's work does not always follow your expectations. You may expect Him to solve the problem one way while He is choosing to solve it another way. You may be looking for a direct answer while He is working through a process. That disconnect can make it seem like God is absent, when in reality, He is just working differently than you imagined. Faith requires you to trust beyond what you can verify. It calls you to believe that God is active even when you have no visible proof. It asks you to stand firm when circumstances suggest otherwise. This is not easy, but it is necessary, because if your faith only functions when you can see results, then it is not really faith, it is just reaction. There is also a tendency to underestimate how many pieces God is putting together at the same time. You are focused on one area of your life, but God sees the whole picture. He is not just solving a single problem, He is aligning multiple things so that everything works together at the right moment. That level of coordination takes time, and it often happens out of sight. But when it finally comes together, it will make sense in a way that you could not have predicted. Even in moments of stillness, God is never idle. His silence is not neglect, and His delay is not denial. He is fully engaged, fully aware, and fully committed to bringing His purpose to pass. The absence of visible movement does not equal the absence of divine activity. It simply means that the work is happening in a dimension you cannot yet see. So when everything around you looks the same, remind yourself that God does not depend on visible progress to be effective. He is not limited by your perspective. He is not restricted by your timeline. And He is not inactive just because you cannot see immediate change. What you are waiting on is not being ignored, it is being prepared, positioned, and perfected in a way that only God can accomplish. There is a constant battle taking place within your mind, and at the center of that battle are two opposing forces, worry and faith. They do not cooperate with each other, and they cannot coexist in the same space for long. One will always dominate the other. The direction your thoughts take will determine which one grows stronger in your life. If you continually focus on what could go wrong, worry will take root. If you intentionally focus on who God is and what He can do, faith will begin to rise. Worry has a way of magnifying problems. It takes a situation and stretches it beyond its actual size, making it feel overwhelming and unmanageable. It replays negative possibilities again and again, creating a cycle that drains your energy and clouds your judgment. The more attention you give to worry, the more powerful it becomes. It feeds on your focus. It thrives on your attention. And before long, it begins to shape how you see everything. Faith works in the opposite way. It does not deny that. Problems exist, but it refuses to let those problems have the final word. Faith shifts your perspective from the size of the issue to the greatness of God. It reminds you that no situation is beyond His control and no challenge is greater than His power. While worry asks, what if everything falls apart? Faith responds, what if God holds everything together? The reason these two cannot occupy the same space is because they are built on completely different foundations. Worry is rooted in uncertainty and fear. It depends on what you don't know and what you can't control. Faith, on the other hand, is rooted in trust. It depends on the character of God, not the condition of your circumstances. When you lean into worry, you are placing your attention on what is unstable. When you choose faith, you are anchoring yourself in what is unchanging. Every day, you are making the choice sometimes without even realizing it. The thoughts you dwell on, the words you speak, and the beliefs you reinforce are all shaping whether worry or faith takes the lead. This is why it is so important to guard your mind. If you allow negative thoughts to run unchecked, they will naturally lead you toward worry. But if you intentionally redirect your thinking toward truth, toward hope, and toward God's promises, you begin to create space for faith to grow. This does not mean that worry will never try to enter your mind. It will come, especially in difficult situations. The difference is in how you respond when it does. You can either entertain those thoughts, letting them settle and grow, or you can challenge them and replace them with truth. Faith is not the absence of fearful thoughts. It is the decision not to let those thoughts take control. It is also important to understand that worry gives you the illusion of control. It makes you feel like by thinking about the problem long enough, you are somehow managing it. But in reality, worry does not solve anything. It does not change outcomes. It only steals your peace and weakens your ability to respond effectively. Faith, however, leads you to trust God with what you cannot control and to act wisely in what you can. It brings clarity instead of confusion, strength instead of exhaustion. There is a cost to holding on to worry. It affects your peace, your focus, your relationships, and even your ability to hear God clearly. When your mind is full of fear, it becomes difficult to recognize truth. Everything starts to look uncertain, and even small challenges can feel overwhelming. But when you choose faith, you begin to experience a different kind of stability. It does not mean that everything becomes easy, but it does mean that you are no longer controlled by fear. Choosing faith is not a one-time decision, it is a daily commitment. It requires you to be intentional about what you think, what you believe, and what you declare. It may feel difficult at first, especially if worry has been a long-standing habit. But over time, as you continue to shift your focus and strengthen your trust in God, faith becomes more natural. It begins to shape your perspective, your reactions, and your expectations. At any given moment, you are feeding either worry or faith. Whatever you feed will grow, and whatever you neglect will weaken. If you constantly dwell on fear, worry will expand and take over. But if you consistently focus on God's truth, His power, and His faithfulness, faith will rise and begin to take its rightful place. Waiting is one of the most challenging experiences in life, especially when you are believing for something important. You pray, you hope, you expect movement, but instead of immediate answers, you find yourself in a season where nothing seems to change. Time passes, and what you are asking for still hasn't arrived. In those moments, it is easy to interpret the delay as rejection or neglect. It can feel like your prayers are being ignored or that your situation has been overlooked. But what feels like a delay is often something much deeper and more purposeful. God does not waste time. Every moment that feels slow or stagnant to you is being used with intention. What you call delay, God often calls preparation. He is not holding back blessings without reason. He is making sure that when they arrive, everything is aligned properly. If things came too soon, you might not be ready to handle them. If doors open prematurely, they could lead to instability instead of growth. Timing matters, and God's timing is always connected to purpose. There are things that must be developed within you before certain opportunities can be sustained. Growth in patience, wisdom, character, and discernment does not happen instantly. These qualities are often formed in seasons where you are required to wait. While you are focusing on what you don't yet have, God may be focusing on who you are becoming. Because what you become will determine how well you handle what you receive. At the same time, God is not only working on you, He is also working on the circumstances around you. There are people, situations, and details that must come together at the right moment. You may be ready for something now, but the environment may not be ready for you. God sees connections that you cannot see. He understands how one decision affects another and how one moment influences the next. So while you are waiting, He is aligning everything so that when the answer comes, it fits perfectly into place. It is also important to recognize that not every delay is meant to be comfortable. Some seasons are intentionally stretching. They push you beyond your normal limits and challenge your usual way of thinking. These moments can feel frustrating because they expose areas where you are not yet strong. But that exposure is not meant to discourage you, it is meant to develop you. Without pressure, there is no growth. Without waiting, there is no strengthening of trust. Another reason delays can feel difficult is because they challenge your expectations. You may have envisioned a certain timeline or imagined how things would unfold. When reality does not match that expectation, it creates tension. You begin to question whether things will happen at all. But God's plans are not bound by your expectations. His perspective is wider, and his understanding is deeper. What you think should happen now may be better suited for later. Delays also reveal where your trust truly lies. When things happen quickly, it is easy to believe. But when time stretches and answers don't come right away, your faith is tested. Do you still trust when you don't see progress? Do you still believe when nothing is changing? These are the moments where faith is refined. It moves from being based on feelings to being grounded in conviction. It is easy to become discouraged during waiting seasons, especially when you compare your situation to others. You may see people around you moving forward while you feel stuck. That comparison can make the delay feel even heavier. But every path is different. What God is doing in your life is not meant to look exactly like what he is doing in someone else's life. Your timing is specific to your purpose. There is also a hidden benefit in delay. It builds appreciation. When something takes time, you learn to value it more deeply. You recognize its importance and handle it with greater care. If everything came instantly, you might not fully understand its worth. Waiting creates a sense of awareness and gratitude that quick success often cannot produce. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, there is movement taking place beneath the surface. Just like a process that cannot be rushed, God's work unfolds step by step. You may not be able to see the progress, but that does not mean it is absent. It simply means it is happening in a way that requires patience to fully understand. So the delay is not empty. It is full of purpose, full of preparation, and full of intention. It is shaping you, positioning you, and aligning everything around you. What feels like a pause is actually progress happening in a form that is not immediately visible. There are moments in life when you reach the edge of what you can do. You've tried every option, used every resource, and exhausted every plan you could think of. The situation stands in front of you, unmoved, unshaken, and unchanged. Logic says it can't be fixed. Experience says it won't turn around. Everything around you points to one conclusion: it's impossible. And it is right there, at that breaking point, where something deeper is revealed about how God works. God is not limited by what limits you. What feels impossible to you is not even difficult for him. The boundaries that stop human effort do not apply to divine power. When your strength runs out, his does not. When your understanding reaches its limit, his remains infinite. The problem is not that the situation is too big. The problem is that we often measure it against our own ability instead of measuring it against God's power. We tend to define what is possible based on what we have seen before. If we haven't experienced something, we assume it cannot happen. If we don't understand how it could work, we dismiss it as unrealistic. But God does not need your experience to create an outcome. He does not need your understanding to bring something into existence. He operates beyond the limits of human logic, which means he can make a way in situations that seem completely closed off. Sometimes the reason a situation looks impossible is because all the visible options have been removed. There is no clear path forward, no obvious solution, and no easy fix. That absence of options can feel overwhelming, but it also creates a space where God's power can be seen more clearly. When there are no human explanations left, whatever happens next cannot be credited to chance or effort. It points directly to something greater. In many cases, people don't experience breakthroughs until they reach this exact point. As long as there are alternatives to rely on, it is easy to depend on your own ability. But when those alternatives disappear, you are left with a choice. Give up or trust God in a deeper way. That moment of decision is where faith becomes real. It is no longer theoretical or comfortable, it becomes a necessity. It is also important to understand that God does not always remove the impossibility immediately. Sometimes he allows you to sit in that tension for a while. That waiting period is not meant to frustrate you, it is meant to shift your perspective. It moves you from self-reliance to complete dependence on him. It teaches you to stop looking for solutions only within your reach and start expecting answers that go beyond it. When God steps into an impossible situation, He often does it in ways that you did not anticipate. The solution may not look like what you imagined. It may come through unexpected people, unusual timing, or circumstances you never considered. That is because His ways are not limited to predictable patterns. He can open doors that were never visible and create opportunities that did not previously exist. The challenge is that fear often tries to take control in these moments. When everything looks impossible, fear starts to speak louder. It tells you that nothing will change, that you've reached the end, that there is no point in hoping anymore. If you listen to that voice long enough, it will drain your confidence and weaken your faith. But fear is based on what you see, while faith is based on who God is. Choosing faith in an impossible situation does not mean ignoring reality. It means acknowledging the reality but refusing to let it define the outcome. It means understanding that while the situation may be beyond you, it is not beyond God. That shift in perspective changes how you respond. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, you begin to stand with expectation. There is also something powerful about how impossible situations reveal the nature of God. When everything is easy, it is difficult to fully grasp the depth of His power. But when you face something that cannot be solved through normal means, and then you see a breakthrough happen, it leaves a lasting impact. It strengthens your faith and gives you a deeper understanding of what God can do. What you once thought could never change becomes a testimony of transformation. What seemed permanent becomes temporary. What looked like an ending becomes the beginning of something new. And when you look back, you realize that the impossibility was not a barrierette, was an opportunity for God to move in a way that could not be mistaken. So the situation in front of you, no matter how impossible it appears, is not the final word. It is simply the stage where something greater can unfold. It is the place where human limitation meets divine power. And when that happens, the outcome is no longer determined by what you can do, but by what God is able to do. There is a natural desire within you to figure things out. When life becomes uncertain, your instinct is to analyze, plan, and control as much as possible. You want clear answers, predictable outcomes, and a sense of security about what comes next. So when situations don't make sense or when things fall outside your control, it creates tension. You begin to overthink, trying to solve problems that don't have immediate solutions. You replay scenarios in your mind, searching for clarity, but often end up with more confusion than peace. The challenge is that not everything in life is meant to be figured out by you. Some things are meant to be trusted with God. When you try to take control of everything, you step into a role you were never designed to carry. You place pressure on yourself to manage outcomes that are far beyond your ability. This leads to frustration, anxiety, and exhaustion because no matter how hard you try, you cannot control every detail of your life. Trusting God requires you to release that need for control. It means accepting that you will not always understand what is happening or why it is happening. It means letting go of the demand for immediate answers and choosing to believe that God is still in charge, even when things seem unclear. This is not a passive approach to life. It is an active decision to rely on God's wisdom instead of your own limited perspective. Trying to control everything often creates a false sense of security. You may feel more comfortable when you have a plan or when you think you've anticipated every possible outcome. But that comfort is fragile because it is based on your ability to predict the future, and the future is not something you can fully predict. One unexpected change can disrupt everything. That is why control is not a stable foundation for peace. Trust, on the other hand, provides a deeper and more lasting stability. When your confidence is rooted in God, it is not shaken by unexpected changes or uncertain outcomes. You understand that even if things don't go according to your plan, they are still within God's control. That awareness allows you to remain steady, even when circumstances are not. It is also important to recognize that your understanding is limited. You see only a small portion of the bigger picture. You interpret situations based on what is immediately in front of you, but God sees everything at once: the past, the present, and the future. He understands how each moment connects to the next and how every detail contributes to a greater purpose. When you try to control outcomes, you are making decisions based on incomplete information. But when you trust God, you are relying on perfect knowledge. Letting go of control does not mean you stop taking responsibility. You still do what you can with what you have. You make wise choices, take necessary actions, and remain faithful in your efforts. But you do not carry the burden of trying to force outcomes. You do not stress over things that are beyond your reach. You do your part, and you allow God to handle what you cannot. One of the hardest aspects of this process is learning to be comfortable with uncertainty. Not knowing what will happen next can feel unsettling. It challenges your sense of stability and pushes you out of your comfort zone. But it is often in that space of uncertainty that trust grows the most. When you don't have all the answers, you are given the opportunity to rely more deeply on God. There is also a connection between control and fear. The more you try to control everything, the more you become aware of how much is actually out of your control. That awareness can increase anxiety because you begin to see all the ways things could go wrong. But when you shift your focus from control to trust, fear begins to lose its hold. You are no longer trying to manage every possibility. Instead, you are placing your confidence in God's ability to handle whatever comes. Trusting God also changes how you respond to challenges. Instead of reacting with panic or frustration, you approach situations with a sense of calm and confidence. You understand that even difficulties have a purpose and that God can work through them in ways you may not immediately see. This perspective allows you to move forward without being overwhelmed. The more you practice trusting God, the more natural it becomes. Each time you choose to release control, you strengthen your faith. You begin to see that you don't have to have everything figured out in order to move forward. You don't have to carry the weight of every outcome. You can walk step by step, knowing that God is guiding you even when the path is not fully clear. In the end, peace is not found in having complete control over your life. It is found in trusting the one who already does. There are moments when the pressure feels heavier than you expected, when the weight of circumstances seems to press in from every side. You may feel stretched, tested, even pushed to your limits. It is in these moments that something critical is being formed within you, even if you don't immediately recognize it. Strength is not developed in comfort, it is built in tension. Growth does not come from ease, it comes from resistance. You might wish for situations to be simpler, for challenges to disappear quickly, for life to move smoothly without interruption. But if everything were easy, there would be no depth to your character. You would never discover what you are capable of handling, and your faith would remain untested and shallow. The very pressure you want removed is often the tool being used to strengthen you. When you are under pressure, your first instinct may be to escape it. You want relief, and that is natural. But not every difficult season is meant to be avoided. Some are meant to be endured because they are shaping something essential inside you. They are building resilience, patience, and endurance qualities that cannot be developed any other way. Without pressure, these qualities remain undeveloped. It is important to understand that pressure reveals as much as it builds. When you are placed in a challenging situation, what is already inside you begins to surface. Your reactions, your thoughts, your habits, they all come to the surface under stress. This can be uncomfortable because it exposes areas where you are not as strong as you thought. But that exposure is not meant to shame you. It is meant to show you where growth is needed. In these moments, you are given a choice. You can allow the pressure to break you, or you can allow it to build you. The difference lies in how you respond. If you focus only on how difficult things feel, you may become discouraged and lose sight of purpose. But if you begin to see pressure as part of a process, your perspective starts to shift. You realize that this season is not permanent, but it is meaningful. Pressure also teaches you dependence. When things are going well, it is easy to rely on your own abilities. You feel confident, in control, and capable. But when challenges arise that exceed your strength, you are reminded that you cannot do everything on your own. This realization pushes you to depend more on God. It deepens your relationship with Him because you begin to seek Him not just in comfort, but in necessity. Another important aspect of pressure is that it refines your focus. Difficult seasons have a way of stripping away distractions. Things that once seemed important begin to lose their significance, and you start to see more clearly what truly matters. Your priorities shift. Your perspective sharpens. What you once overlooked becomes meaningful, and what you once held tightly may no longer seem worth holding on to. It is also during these times that perseverance is developed. Perseverance is not simply the ability to endure, it is the ability to continue moving forward despite difficulty. It is choosing to keep going even when progress feels slow, even when results are not immediate. This kind of endurance builds a strength that remains long after the season has passed. You may not always understand why a particular challenge has come into your life. It may not make sense in the moment, and it may feel unfair. But not every process is meant to be fully understood while you are in it. Some things become clear only after you have moved through them. Looking back, you often realize that what felt like a burden was actually a turning point. There is also a level of preparation happening in these moments. The strength you are building now is often needed for what lies ahead. Without it, you may not be ready for the responsibilities or opportunities that are coming. So while you are focused on getting through the present, God may be preparing you for the future. It is easy to underestimate how much you are growing when you are in the middle of pressure. Progress does not always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like struggle, like resistance, like effort. But growth is taking place even if it is not immediately visible. Each challenge you face, each moment you endure is adding to your strength. So the pressure you feel is not without purpose. It is shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you. It is not there to stop you, it is there to develop you. And while it may not be comfortable, it is necessary for becoming who you are meant to be. There comes a point in life where the desire to understand everything becomes overwhelming. You want answers before you move forward. You want clarity before you take the next step. You want guarantees before you make decisions. But life rarely works that way. Most of the time you are asked to move forward without full visibility, to take steps without knowing every outcome, and to trust without having all the answers. That is where trust becomes not just a belief, but a necessity. Trust is not something that is developed in moments of certainty. It is formed in moments of uncertainty. When everything is clear, trust is easy. When outcomes are predictable, faith feels natural. But when things are unclear, when answers are delayed, and when outcomes are unknown, that is when trust is truly tested. And it is in that testing that trust either deepens or weakens. One of the hardest things about trusting is the desire to control outcomes. You want to make sure everything works out a certain way. You want to avoid disappointment, avoid failure, avoid uncertainty. So you try to manage every detail. You plan, you calculate, you anticipate. But no matter how much you try to control, there will always be things outside your reach. That realization can feel uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. It reminds you that you were never meant to carry the weight of everything on your own. Trusting God means accepting that you are not in control of everything, and that you do not need to be. It means believing that even when things don't go according to your plan, there is still a greater plan at work. That does not mean everything will always make immediate sense. It means that there is purpose even in what you don't understand yet. There are situations where you may not see any progress for a long time. You pray, you wait, and nothing seems to change. In those moments, trust is what holds you steady. It prevents you from giving up when nothing visible is happening. It keeps you grounded when emotions fluctuate and circumstances feel unstable. Trust is what anchors you when everything else feels uncertain. It is also important to understand that trust is not passive.
Loving you alone feels so beautiful, and yet it hurts the most. You became my quiet sunrise, the dream I never dared to say. Every smile you gave so freely took my breath a little away. I held this love like fragile glass, so precious, soft and true. But every beat inside my heart was only reaching out to you. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. I can't blame my heart for choosing someone it could never keep. So I smile through hidden heartache and love you quietly. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. Maybe loving you in silence is the closest I can stay, though it leaves behind a sorrow that may never fade away. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone,